You did. Good morning, Desiree.
A very good morning to you. Your overall impressions of the President's delivery last night?
Desiree, I have to say that we were incredibly positively overwhelmed. Having worked on the question of social security through NEDLAC for many years, we were expecting a far more limited response. We knew that the President had appreciated that food parcels were necessary as a humanitarian gesture, but were not going to be sufficient to meet people's basic needs. In addition to that, we were really hoping to have a transformative approach to helping people out of the current situation. What the President's announced was firstly recognizing the destitution of current grant beneficiaries by extending the child support grant. We had not expected that in addition to the child support grant, he would announce a top-up for other grants. So that really is to be welcome for old age pensioners as well as the people living with disabilities. But I think the most radical step that he announced, Desiree, was the expansion of social relief of distress as a cash grant to working age adults. For many years, we've been talking about the fact that 18 to 59-year-old unemployed and poor people in South Africa are not covered by social security. So all in all, we're incredibly happy with it. We're working at NEDLAC in order to see how the banks and other institutions can assist in the allocation of this. For days and, in fact, weeks, we've been holding out at NEDLAC trying to reach this agreement. So it really was a good day. And I just have to announce that yesterday was also marked 2 years of the burying of Dr. Skye, who really was the father of many of these social policy interventions as the Minister of Social Development. So all in all, it was a very fitting day. We just hope that the policies will be implemented as soon as possible, because the levels of hunger that we're receiving, the reports of, are quite overwhelming.
Talking about the levels of hunger, are you able to give us some sort of indication, Isobel, in terms of that relief of hunger and social distress, in terms of the levels of that distress?
Desiree, I think it's important to remember that even 2 years ago, when the last poverty survey was done, 1 in 4 people in South Africa was living in hunger below the food poverty line. And that's certainly exacerbated. We've seen a decline in employment. So taking that as a baseline, putting on top of that the fact that school feeding schemes have been closed as a result of the schools being closed, and taking into account the fact that people who were earning existence through peace jobs had been included, I would say that starvation is reaching at least just under half of all South Africans. And the point about starvation is that it leads to malnutrition, which has a long-term impact. It also has resulted in a lot of social upheaval, as people are really using their bodies as the last ability that they have to articulate their message and their hunger. My own view on the emerging hunger is that this is not just related to COVID-19. I think that what we're seeing is people actually saying that the levels of hunger and malnutrition and starvation have been their daily reality for the longest time. And I think it's really encouraging the belief that they're placed in government that by stating their need, it will be met. And so last night I was saying to someone that I thought that the announcement was going to be the most important announcement that the President could make in his career as President of the ruling party and of government. And I think that he lived up to that.
As a result of the announcement, Isobel, there's now a lot of concern about how the food will be dispersed. There's talk of vouchers and cash transfers. As a person who works in this space, what would be your suggestions in terms of how the money should be given to the beneficiaries?
Desiree, I think you picked up on a really important point. It's one of the things that I've been saying through the NEDLAC process, that we need to communicate. So last night, people heard that they would be able to access very welcome income, as well as food parcels. My message would be we're meeting tomorrow in NEDLAC to look at the mechanisms for how that will be distributed, for people to please be patient for a day or two. Through NEDLAC, we have a vast network of NPOs, non-profit organizations across the country, who are central to the distribution of food. The Gift of the Giver and other organizations through the Solidarity Fund will be doing that. And I think we need to make the messaging clear. What we've been hearing recently are the quite awful stories of corruption and favoritism and also looting of food parcels. So that will become clear in the next 2 days. And if people could possibly use the existing hotlines just to get information, points about registration and how people do that without posing serious health threats by queuing at SASSA offices, all of this will be forthcoming.
Not only looting and corruption. The other day we were watching a video of the distribution of substandard maize meal. I don't know where they get this from. In the civic society space, how are you tackling the issue of corruption?
It's a very serious one and one that we hadn't anticipated, to be honest. So what we're doing is monitoring. We have a community constituency hotline where people can report that, and we're following that up. It really is tricky with the lockdown because the point of investigating and getting back to the source is really, really difficult. So basically, when people receive food parcels like that, we would suggest that you phone the hotline, but you also go to your nearest police station and record an affidavit, because if you want to apply for an alternative food parcel, that would be the most feasible way. And after lockdown, the police would then be able to have a record so that they're able to trace down the perpetrators who must be brought to book.
I just want to reiterate the point you were saying, because as you mentioned, we're still thin on detail, and just asking people to be patient as the detail comes out. Do you have an idea in terms of the time frames?
I'm a very impatient person, and people who work with me know that I'm always pushing for yesterday rather than today. I can undertake that by close of business tomorrow. There will be clear messaging. It might not be sophisticated messaging, but we will get the messaging out.
Yeah. Thank you so much for talking to us today.
My pleasure. Have a good day.
Isobel Frye there.